Hello, my little Luxxes. I'm your host, Charsie Luxxx, and this is another Luxxy Charms. And this was going to be another episode of ghost stories my father used to tell me. But, so, obviously I have not been the most, energetic, I should say, for the last, couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I had gotten COVID here recently and had to deal with that. Not sure if I had to bleep that out or not, because YouTube's been kind of weird about people using the COVID word and everything like that. So but it's weird, the things that they will demonetized for, but I don't need to worry about that for quite some time because it's going to be quite a bit of time before I have 1,000 followers, so I guess it doesn't really matter if I get demonetized or not because I can't monetize anything right now anyway, so yeah, just did a quick little look here. I just wanted to do a simple kind of like grungy gothic look, and more was along the lines of I am testing out some new makeup from Surreal Makeup, which you've heard me talk about that indie brand before, and these are handcrafted cosmetics that are formulated for sensitive skin, and on top of that it's cruelty-free, vegan, and she is doing pressed powders because normally she just had the mineral powders and the creams and everything, but she is now doing pressed powders and sent me one of the samples to kind of like test out, and Sunset Beach, which it is such a stunning color, and I love this one anyways because I keep it in a separate one. I have like the large container, but I like keeping it in the smaller one. But as you can see, it is just the powder, and wanted to test the pressed one, so I kind of just did a quick little look with this, and oh my gosh, this stuff is so good, and it comes on like a dream. Swatches like a dream. You can put it on your eyes like a dream. I also wore it kind of like as a blush here, so you can kind of see it. It's obviously very shiny blush, but you know what? Unfortunately, it's like super shiny on my hand. But yeah, so of course, testing that out and everything, and I really like the look and everything, and of course I knew I was gonna love it, and it's gonna wear very well because her other makeups are stunning and fabulous, but I'm very impressed with it. I can't wait till the rest of the line comes out for these, and of course I'm gonna snag a whole bunch more of these, so I'm excited, very excited for those. And here is her card, so if you want to check out her cosmetics, and then I also will put a link in the description below for you. But let's get into our ghost stories that my father used to tell me. So, lack of energy, and it was one of those where I'm like, which story did I want to go back into and be able to elaborate on very well? And I have kind of talked about this one in the past in a little channel of horrors, but I didn't go into like full detail in the story. So this is The Woman with the Golden Arm. Very strange title, but you will see why. My dad also had these weird, goofy horror stories that he would love to tell us. And this one, obviously, is one of the silly ones. And just kind of give a little more upbeat one, I guess. We shall see. This story is about a woman named Mary, who was an old spinster lady, but she was very rich, filthy rich. And in fact, she had always said that she would never get married to anybody because the person who would want to get married to her probably only just wanted to be with her for her money. Now, she lived out in the middle of nowhere. She lived out in the countryside, very peaceful country, lots of rolling hills. And of course, it was one of those where she decided to move into a house that was only about a mile, maybe only a quarter of a mile away from a cemetery. But she said she liked it there because it was peaceful and it was only her, and that she only had to worry about the dead being next door. Well, young man came into town by the name of John, and he decided, you know what? He was gonna get married to that Mary because she was so filthy rich. Everybody knew about Mary and her money, but everybody knew that Mary had no interest in anybody. All she cared about was being on her own and having her riches. Well, this John was a very charming man, very young, very handsome, so he kept thinking, you know what, I can just weasel my way in there and I can get a hold of that woman. And he goes, and I'll be able to get a hold of her fortune. Poor Mary, living out in the middle of nowhere, had an accident because she's running a little farm on her own and she's getting older in age, has that little accident, and unfortunately she gets injured in the process and her arm had to be amputated. So here's poor Mary, who loses her left arm completely. Luckily it wasn't her good arm, so she still could write and everything, but she didn't like looking like she only had one arm. Well, she comes up with this great idea that she takes all this gold that she has accumulated, that's all that her money was, and she has it melted down and she has it cast and molded into the form of an arm. And she has it attached to her, so she just has this golden arm on her, but she also keeps it gloved and looking nice and elegant with like lace and all kinds of embellishments. But all of her riches now were in this arm. Unbeknownst to John, who's been trying to date her, did not know that she put all of her riches into this one arm of hers, and she did a pretty good job of, keeping it to herself and not letting anyone know about everything that she technically owned now that was considered money or assets was in this silly golden arm that she had made for herself. Well, John finally weaseled his way, and because he was so damn charming, got himself to be able to finally date Mary. Well, Mary was completely smitten with this guy, absolutely loved him, was just so in love, but he was tricking her. She thought he truly loved her for her because when she'd bring him to the house, didn't seem expensive, just seemed like a quaint little country house in the middle of nowhere because remember, she put all of her riches and emphasis on that golden arm that she had to have made for herself. So John's putting on a good show. Of course, he knows that she's rich. He just can't see the riches, but he knows the rumors and he's heard everything around town. John finally getting his way in, and of course Mary being totally smitten with him and in love and wanting to be with him. Of course, she's pretty old in age now, and she's decided, you know what, after he finally proposed to her, she kind of said no for that first time, but John could just tell where he's like, if I just keep trying to become a part of her life, he goes, I bet I can. And sure enough, bringing her roses every day, making her silly little poetry songs and all kinds of just the usual things that a young, handsome, charming man could find his way into the heart of an older woman who was very lonely at that point in time. And finally, he proposes to her again with the whole elaborate scheme with the rose petals and having champagne, and well, she finally gives in and she says yes to his proposal. Well, finally, because of their wedding day and everything, where he knows that something had happened and that she had a fake arm, of course, the wedding day comes and they want to put on the wedding ring. Well, of course, she doesn't have a good left arm. It's the golden arm. Well, they make it to where they put it on her right hand, but this is the first time that John is realizing. He's like, what kind of a prosthetic arm do you have on, dear? And she's like, oh, never you mind. He goes, that seems awfully heavy for a prosthetic arm for someone your age. Don't you want something of a lighter material? No, this is perfectly fine. I've had this for years since my accident, and I love this arm. This is a part of me. And so obviously this is when John finally starts to realize something special about that arm. And of course, being married to her, being with her, finally realizing that this is a golden arm and that she had this cast special. He kept thinking, he's like, people kept trying to tell me rumors that she had a golden arm melted and molded for herself, but he's like, God, that just would seem so ridiculous, because I can't imagine how heavy that would be for a little old lady. But sure enough, Mary had this golden arm made for herself. John is finally married to Mary, and they are together, and they are in blissful marriage for a little while. Well, of course, John's unhappy because John wants all the money, and of course, Mary lives by decent, simple means. She just loves living out in her little farmette, just taking care of her chickens and horses and cows and anything she has on there. Well, John realizes, he's like, well, I really don't want this little farmette life. He goes, I want to live the rich life. And of course, he has no access to any riches whatsoever, because everything that was of any value for Mary was in that golden arm. Well, of course, when John finds this out and realizes this, he's like, I gotta somehow get a hold of this golden arm. And he's like, well, what can I do? Well, poor Mary, being the age that she is, she passes. And John's thinking, oh, what great fortune this is. He's like, I finally can get my hands on this arm now that she's passed away. And of course, he's not heartbroken that she's passed away and gone, because the whole time all he wanted was her money anyways. This was just a way for him to weasel in and get the money for himself. Well, now that she's passed, he's like, I can get a hold of that golden arm. Well, in her will, she had asked to be buried with her golden arm, because she did not want to be without the one thing besides her John that was special to her. And of course, she even said in her will, well, I can't have John buried with me, so I will have my golden arm buried with me instead. So John, of course, completely forlorn and sad, and of course everybody at the funeral and the burial is mistaking and thinking that John is sad about Mary being gone, but no, he is upset and sad because the golden arm is being buried with her instead. So everybody thinks he's sitting there sobbing for his poor dead wife, and they're thinking, well, maybe John really did care about this woman, not realizing that he was just sad at his misfortune, but he has no chance of getting this fortune anymore. So they bury Mary, and of course John goes back home, and he's just stewing. All he's doing is sitting there, and he's drinking, and he's just getting to the point where he's just angry, stupid drunk, and he's just so upset and angry, and he's like, God, why did she care if she was buried with her riches or not? He's like, I just don't understand. Why the hell? And he's like, it's just up that hill. She's buried up in that cemetery. It's not even a quarter of a mile away. It's just up the hill. I can see that cemetery. And he goes, it's like she's laughing at me. She's got that arm. She's got all the riches. And that she's laughing at me that I got married to her and I got nothing out of all that work that I did and put into that. Well, he decides, while he's totally smashed drunk, that it would be a great idea to get a shovel and a lamp and to go up to that cemetery, and that he was going to dig up that body, and he was gonna get that golden arm because he was owed that golden arm. He put in all that hard work to get with Mary. He deserved that golden arm. At least that's what was in his head. Of course, any sane person would know that he had no rights to that arm whatsoever. But here we have John with an old shovel, and of course he's got an old lantern, and he decides he's gonna sneak up that hill in the middle of the night when nobody's around, everybody's asleep. And he does, he makes sure nobody's around. So he goes up that hill with that lantern and that shovel, and he gets to that cemetery, and he goes and he finds Mary's grave. And of course, since all the soil's still loose, it's super easy for him to dig up the grave. And he's just going at it, going quickly, going through that loose soil, gets down, finds the coffin, and he realizes he's gonna pry it open, and there it is. There's that golden arm still attached to her. So he takes his time and he finds a way to get that arm detached from her, and he's just, in his excitement, he's finally got this golden arm, and he's finally got the riches after all that hard work and everything. Well, he grabs the shovel, and he's got the golden arm, and he goes down the hill, and he's just, in his excitement, all of a sudden, he's down at the bottom of the hill, and it hits him, and he goes, I have an arm in one hand and a shovel in the other. I forgot that lamp. And he looks up at the hill, and sure enough, he can see the glowing of the lantern up on the hill back at the grave. Now, mind you, in his excitement, he still remembered to bury Mary's grave. He did at least remember to do that in all of his excitement before he went down the hill. But he didn't pick up that lantern from its spot where it was sitting on top of her tombstone. He's like, well, I'm gonna go put this golden arm away, and I'm gonna go put it in a hiding spot. So he went up to the master bedroom, and he remembered that Mary had that little spot that she would store little papers and things like that, and that's where she'd keep her will. So he put under the floorboards, he hid this golden arm, and he went to go back downstairs and headed outside, and he was going to head up that hill. Well, all of a sudden he realized, he goes, by golly, I think that light moved. And he's looking at the lantern and trying to see, and he's like, sure enough, he could see that the lantern was slowly kind of swaying back and forth like somebody was carrying it. And he's like, oh shit. He's like, somebody must have saw me. Somebody must have saw me go up there. And he's like, maybe they didn't realize it was me. Maybe they didn't see me. So he kept waiting, and he's like, okay, maybe if I slowly make my way to the edge of the property. And he's just kind of watching. Well, sure enough, he's realizing that the lamp is slowly moving its way, and it's coming his direction. It's not going any other direction. It's coming down to his direction. He's starting to freak out. He goes, well, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And he's like, okay, I think I got this. He goes, she just recently died. I'm drunk as hell, and I just was sad, so I wanted to go up and visit her grave. I was very, very lonely, very sad. So he's like, I had to go visit her grave. I unfortunately forgot the lamp. He's like, yeah, I can totally play this out. I can play this out and pretend this. Well, he's finally got himself psyched up about it. All of a sudden he realizes he can hear something. And he goes, what is that? And it was just this high-pitched, soft noise in the distance. And he's watching the lamp as it's slowly making its way down the hill towards him. All of a sudden he realizes, he's like, I can hear a voice. And he goes, what is it saying? So he's trying to see, and he's trying to listen. And as he's listening, all of a sudden he can hear a woman's voice. And he can hear as it goes, who's got my golden arm? Who's got my golden arm? And of course John stops, and he's like, oh my God. He's like, that was Mary's voice. And he goes, no, there's no way. He goes, I'm just drunk. I'm just being paranoid, I'm being drunk. And he's watching. All of a sudden he can start seeing that there's, as the figure that is holding onto the lamp is in a long white gown, and it's a woman's figure. And he's watching as she's now slowly descending from the hill towards him, holding onto the lamp. And he can clearly see now that it looks like the figure of Mary coming down the hill. And there's only one arm that's holding out this lamp. And he still can hear this haunting, haunting woman's voice going, "Who's got my golden arm? Who's got my golden arm?" And it's just so forlorn, and he's freaking out, and he's like, "Oh my God, Mary came back from the dead." Well, of course, then he stops and he goes, "No, maybe we buried her alive." And he's like, "Oh my God," he's like, "I don't know what to do." But he's freaking out, and he can hear her come down the hill. Well, he decides, he's like, I gotta hide. So he runs into the house. He locks up all the doors that he can. He tries like slamming desks and tables over the door, trying to blockade it. And as he gets done doing that, he can see that the figure has now made its way onto the property, and it's slowly making its way to the front porch. And he just runs straight upstairs. He goes straight up the stairs. He goes into the house, and he's like, "Oh my God." He's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. He's like, "Here comes Mary. She's gonna get me. What is going on?" So he goes into the room, and he decides that he's gonna hide under those floorboards with this golden arm, because if you open it up and everything, it is large enough that you can fit one body in there. So John just shoves himself right into the in between these panels, and shoves himself up against with this golden arm, and it closes everything up. And he's like, "If I'm really quiet, she shouldn't find me." So he's just listening. Well, he can hear the footsteps onto the front porch, and he can hear that haunting woman's voice as she's still clearly stating, "Who took my golden arm? Who took my golden arm?" And of course he just hears this loud bang, something just flies into the front door, and he can hear that desk and that table that he had up against the door just crash up against the wall downstairs. And he's just inside that spot where he's hiding under the panels. He's just shaking, and he's shaking like, "Oh my God, I hope she doesn't find me. Oh my God, she's come to get me." And he's hugging onto this stupid golden arm that he had to get, and he's just freaking out, totally scared. Now he can hear her coming into the house. He can hear the footsteps coming up the stairs, and he can now hear the footsteps as it starts coming down the hallway. And finally, she's in the bedroom. She hasn't said a word since she's come in the house, but he can clearly hear those footsteps. Well, she starts stepping into the bedroom towards where he's hiding underneath the floorboards with the golden arm. And one more time she goes, "Who's took my golden arm?" And all of a sudden John sees the floorboards just fly up, and there's Mary just staring at him like, "Did you?" Well, lo and behold, nobody ever heard from John ever again. All they know is that the house was completely broken into and trashed. But up on the hill sits Mary, and they found this lantern above her gravesite. But nobody knows what happened to poor John. All we know is that Mary's still buried with her golden arm. Now, mind you, when my dad used to tell a story, the story would literally just end with him scaring the bejesus out of us with the, "Did you?" Yeah. But that is one of his sillier ghost stories, because, you know, listening to a man making that funny little old lady voice of, "Who's got my golden arm?" But guys, I hope you enjoyed another ghost stories that my father used to tell me with me. Hopefully I was more energetic than what I'm feeling right now, and I will definitely tell everyone, please stay safe, please stay healthy, and share with me your favorite ghost stories, and let's enjoy the campfire together. And once again, I am Charsie Luxxx. Thank you for joining me on another Luxxy Charms of ghost stories and ghost stories my father used to tell me. You can find me on my Twitter for Charsie Luxxx with Luxxx, or on my Instagram for Charsie87. I have another YouTube channel. It is Little Channel of Horrors with my friend DC. And once again, thank you for joining me on this lovely, very cold, very wicked evening. And enjoy the rest of your day. Bye. So, our story begins in Midwestern, back in the woods. Really, cat, right now? The timing for my cat.